Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Luke chapter 6, and I'm going to give you a small overview, okay, of what is to happen, okay, in Luke chapter 6. So right now we are still, okay, in the fourth section of the major sections of Luke. Okay, can you all see the PowerPoint slide? Can? Okay, so we are in the fourth section. Okay, we are still in Galilee. Okay, which will happen all the way until chapter 9. Okay, if you have forgotten the major sections, okay, there's the prologue, which was the first few words to Theophilus. And then there's the birth and childhood of Jesus, which we covered in chapter 1 and chapter 2. And then chapter 3 was Jesus' preparation for public ministry, okay, which includes the time of his temptation. And then we find that Jesus starts his ministry off in Galilee. And Galilee is, well, what we call a daerah, a region, a small, yeah. So, and in Galilee, there are a couple of towns, okay, and one of the towns that we have been talking about quite a number of times is Capernaum. Okay, so right now we are still in this fourth section. We'll still be there until chapter 9. Okay, and then at the end of chapter 9, we find that Jesus begins his journey down to Jerusalem. If you have your maps with you, you can kind of map out where is Galilee and where is Jerusalem. Galilee is up north of Israel, and then Jerusalem is down south. Okay, so we're in Galilee, and we are continuing, okay, Jesus' section there. Now, there are three major sections in Luke chapter 6. Okay, I know it's divided into, let me see, there's 2, and there's 2, 1, and then there's 5. Okay, but instead of doing 2, 1, and 5, because it sounds like so many, I would say that there's 3 major sections. Number 1 is we're going to talk again about the conflict over the Sabbath. We find that, in the coming chapters, this theme is going to come out a lot. This altercation, not altercation, this argument, okay, or differences in understanding, okay, between the Sabbath, okay, between the way the Pharisees think and the way Jesus thinks. We find that there's always going to be a conflict over there. So our first section covers that. Second section covers the part where Jesus chooses his 12 apostles. And then the third one is usually referred to the most difficult part in chapter 6, which is the Sermon on the Plain. Okay, there are altogether 5 parts in the Sermon on the Plain, and they seem very disconnected. Okay, maybe at first glance when you read it, it seems very disconnected. And I hope that maybe today or in the next class, we can try to deconstruct it so that when we see the bigger picture, we find that, oh, actually it's not that difficult after all. Okay, the Sermon on the Plain can be easy. It's just because it's a sermon, so there's quite a lot of things to remember about what Jesus says in that sermon. Okay, so we're going to start off with the conflict over the Sabbath. Okay, and we're going to read all the way from verse 1 to verse 11. We're not going to read the 2 separate parts differently. We're going to read both parts together in chapter 6, verses 1 to 11 all the way. And this is where, of course, I would like you to turn on your mics. And since there's only 6 of us, maybe it'd be a good idea if we each could take 2 verses each, except for one person. Now one person can take 1 verse. Can we do that? Okay, let's have everyone read 2 verses each. Whenever you feel that it's your turn, because I'm not going to call the names, okay. If you feel that it's your turn, then you just turn on your mic, and you just read the 2 verses that you want to read. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the last person reads 11, which will probably be me. Okay, all right, over to you, the first person who's reading the 2 verses. So is anybody reading? Anybody?
Chapter 6 makan.
Yeah, chapter 6.
Okay. Jesus was walking through some wheat fields on a Sabbath. His disciples began to pick the heads of wheat, rub them in their hands, and eat the grain. Some Pharisees asked, Why are you doing what our law says you cannot do on the Sabbath? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, verse 3 and 4.
Jesus answered them, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his men were hungry? He went into the house of God, took the bread offered to God, ate it, and gave it also to his men. Yet it is against our law for anyone except the priest to eat that bread."
Okay, verse 5 and 6. Sorry, next person. It can be either Jericho or well. Okay, go ahead.
Then Jesus said,
Oh, yeah. And Jesus concluded, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath."
Verse 6.
On another Sabbath, Jesus went into a synagogue and taught. A man was there whose right hand was paralyzed.
All right. Noel?
the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." So he got up and stood there.
I'm going to read the rest of the 3 verses. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, what does our law allow us to do on the Sabbath? To help or to harm? To save someone's life or to destroy it?" He looked around them all. Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand became well again. They were filled with rage and began to discuss among themselves what they could do to Jesus. Okay, so we find that in these first 2 sections, okay, there is this conflict over the Sabbath, okay, which we're going to be talking about in this next section. All right, so in this conflict over the Sabbath, there are 2 events that are happening. Okay, so we're going to walk through the first 2 events and then we'll see how we can dissect it out. Okay, so first you find that Jesus is walking through the grain fields on the Sabbath. Okay, and the Sabbath, traditionally the Sabbath for us, it's we understand it as a Saturday. Okay, it's the we understand it as a Saturday lah. And for the Jews, the Sabbath is considered a day of rest. So on a day of rest, you're not allowed to do any form of work at all. Okay, so Jesus is walking through the grain fields on the Sabbath, which is not wrong. There's totally nothing wrong about that. Okay, but the disciples began to pick the heads of wheat. Okay, so if you see the picture over here, there's this wheat over here. So in the wheat there, inside the pods, okay, there's this thing that you can makan lah. Okay, and the way to take out the thing that you can makan, the wheat, okay, is to rub them in your hands, okay, so that dia akan terbuka, the kulit will terkupas, then you eat the grain that is inside. Okay, wheat is quite similar. I've not really seen wheat before, but I've seen rice paddy lah. Okay, and rice paddy also, works about the same way. So there's all these pods, and then you have this rice grains inside lah. Okay, so in the same way, the wheat now, okay, in order for you to take out, it's very simple. If you feel very hungry, just rub the pods, okay, in your hands, and you eat the grain. Okay, so the problem is not walking through the grain fields, and neither is the problem picking the heads of wheat. Okay, the problem is in the rubbing of the wheat in the hands. Okay, as which will be pointed out by the Pharisees. Okay, so the Pharisees was doing something that was not allowed. The Pharisees were saying that these disciples were doing something that was not allowed in the Sabbath. Okay, this action of plucking the heads of wheat and reaping, okay, is considered reaping. Oh yeah, sorry, my mistake. So even the plucking itself is a problem. Okay, it's a problem to the Pharisees because to them that is considered as work. Because by plucking the heads of the wheat, okay, macam like now in a lot of kampongs, there's this musim is called, I don't know what it's called in another language, but in Rumus it's called musim mengomot, musim mengatam padi. So this taking out the paddy heads, okay, is considered reaping. It's called reaping in English, and it's considered work. Okay, and even worse, threshing out the wheat, which is to to rub it against their, to take out the wheat inside. Okay, is also considered work. Okay, so That was the Pharisees' main problem. You see, you walk through the fields, no problem. But you go and pluck this one, is considered work. Somehow you go and trash out the wheat so that you can eat it, okay, it's considered work. Okay, so the Pharisees were very, they were very accusative. They wanted to accuse Jesus of, Alama, you don't follow our law. So it's like, how can you claim to be one of us? Okay, so that was the Pharisees' accusation. Okay, so because they were doing work, they were breaking the Sabbath law, and because they were breaking the Sabbath law, then they considered melanggar peraturan sudah lah. Okay, but if you notice Jesus' answer, Jesus quoted David's case. Okay, and I'm going to turn back into David's case once again. Sorry. I'm going to turn back into David's case. If we look at chapter 6, verses this one. So look at David's case in verse 3. Haven't you read what David did when he and his men were hungry? Okay, he went into the house of God, took the bread offered to God, ate it, and gave it also to his men. Yet it is against our law for anyone except the priest to eat that bread. So what Jesus is trying to point out here, he's not trying to say he's not trying to say, okay, sorry, my mistake. He's trying to say, he's not trying to say, okay, he's trying to say, okay, that David did something similar. Okay, if you say now, okay, Pharisees, you keep saying that I break the law, right? Okay, let's talk about David, because everyone in the Jewish community, okay, looks up to David, okay, and everyone, of course, expects that the Messiah will come from the line of David. So, David must be, to them, must be somebody that is very hebat lah. Okay, but even David himself, look at what he did. He went into the house of God. He took the bread that was offered to God, okay, ate it and gave it also to his men. Now, if you are very legalistic, you will say, wow, you're stealing from God, okay, because this bread was offered to God. And yet David took it. David, the person who God says is a man after his own heart. Okay, God acknowledges that David is a man after God's own heart. Even David took the bread that was supposed to be for God, and he ate it, and then he gave it also to his men. Okay, but according to the law, it says only the priest can eat that bread. Okay, if you look back into Jewish history, you know that only the priests are allowed to eat food that is offered to God. Okay, because the priests don't have any pay, and then this is how they earn their keep lah. Okay, so in a sense, Jesus was trying to draw a comparison between what he did and what the disciples did, and also what David did. Okay, which is actually David broke the law. Okay, just like my disciples also, they broke the law. According to you, the Pharisees. Okay, according to you, we broke the law. But how come David didn't die? If David really stole the bread that was from God, maybe God would have punished him, or he would have become, he would have broken the law lah. Okay, but yet it was okay for David to do so. Okay, and that is because, okay, coming back to the slide. Okay, so in quoting David's case, okay, and this case is found in 1 Samuel chapter 21, okay, verses 1 to 6 lah. Okay, as pointed out here. So David took the bread offered to God, yada yada. He broke the ceremonial law. Okay, but the point is this, to meet human need. Okay, this is the point of the whole thing. Okay, the disciples were hungry. When they were walking through the grain fields, they were hungry at that time. Okay, of course it's on the Sabbath, but you see, there is a basic human need. And if you're hungry, okay, if you're hungry, you should have food that you can eat. Okay, so the point is this, the point that Jesus was trying to make with David's case was that David broke the ceremonial law in order to meet a human need. And we will find this theme recurring again and again in chapter 6. This is basically the theme of chapter 6, okay, which we will come to in a while. Okay, and yet David didn't receive any condemnation from God. Okay, God didn't rebuke him as far as we know. Okay, and David even gave the bread to other people. Okay, the bread that was supposed to be for God. Okay, So in saying so, Jesus states that a ceremonial law must take second place to a higher moral law, okay, which is the meeting of human needs. Okay, and we will come to that in the next section of this chapter. Okay, as Son of God sent as the Messiah, Jesus had the authority to interpret the laws concerning the Sabbath according to the purposes of God and overrule what goes against his purposes. Okay, which is this lah. Okay, the higher moral law. Okay, ceremonial law is ceremonial law. Okay, and we find that Jesus keeps saying this throughout this whole chapter. That acts of mercy, acts of mercy, acts of human mercy. Sorry, mercy lah, merciful acts lah. Okay, must take a higher importance. Okay, than keeping the law. Okay, than following the rules, than obey. Okay, then obeying the law. Okay, and it is with this that Luke starts this chapter. Okay, and we find that this, as I said just now, this theme, you will see it again and again in the whole of chapter 6. Okay, we find that acts of mercy, okay, being merciful is more important than keeping the law. Okay, and it is something that even for us today, is something that basic humans struggle sometimes with this. Sometimes we very tariqat with the law, may not be necessarily ceremonial law lah. Okay, it can be any law. Okay, but sometimes, basic human needs, sometimes should take a more important role. I think of a situation last time when I was in school. I was a pengawas lah. Yeah, I know, believe it or not. So last time I was in school, I was a pengawas, and unfortunately, as one of the very few guy pengawas in the school, the pengawas, who is a guy, usually has to take care of the toilet. Okay, so all the girls will get to take care of the canteen, and all the guys will take care of the toilet, which is, I also don't understand what is the reasoning behind that. But fine. So as the guy pengawas who takes care of the toilet, okay, so I usually have my fair share of, like after rehat is over, and then the students are supposed to go back to classes, right? So part of my job is to make sure that the door to the toilet stays closed after rehat. And I have to stand in front of the toilet for another 10 minutes just to make sure that nobody goes to the toilet after rehat. Okay, so yeah, so this is a fun job of a pengawas. But you see, the point of the law is important. Okay, the point of the school rule is that after rehat, you had the entire 20 minutes during rehat, okay, to go to the toilet and to eat and whatever lah. Okay, yeah, last time we had 20 minutes. Okay, now half an hour, so bad, so good already. Okay, so if you have all the time during rehat, you shouldn't be going to the toilet after that time is out. You should be going back to classes. So that was the point of the law. Okay, but I remember there was one time I was taking care of the door. So I was standing out there in front of the door, closed door, mind you, okay, for 10 minutes. So in that 10 minutes, I remember there was somebody, I don't remember what form he was. I was form 5 at the time. But he came down, and it was very obvious that he had a stomach ache. Okay. So by law, I'm supposed to keep the door closed. I'm supposed to tell that student, go back to class. Okay, you're not supposed to come in. But it was so obvious that he had a stomach ache. Okay, and I think this is a situation that all of us may be familiar with, from time to time. What would you do at that time? If I were a Pharisee, I would say, no, you go back to class, because the law says so. Okay, but Jesus is telling us that sometimes, not sometimes, okay, Jesus is telling us that the meeting of human needs, there has to be a higher moral law, okay, which takes place of the ceremonial law. Because if all of us hold on to this ceremonial law, if all of us hold on to the law, then the person who was having the stomach ache and desperately needed to go into the toilet would be really very kasihan. He had to hold it in for a further 10 minutes before he can finally go to the toilet again. Okay, so in that respect, okay, we find that even in our daily lives, we need to think about how important is all these commandments in the Bible. Okay, how do they relate, okay, to to this idea that God is giving us, that there is a higher moral law, there is a place for mercy, okay, mercy and grace, even in keeping the law. Okay, so something for us to think about. in the end, I opened the door, lah. Okay, so in case you were asking, in the end, I opened the door and I let him in, lah. But and I wasn't scolded, okay, because he desperately needed to go to the toilet. I'm not gonna be responsible if he, if he pooped on the ground or something. Okay, all right. So the point is this, that the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, Jesus claimed authority over the Sabbath. Okay, therefore, it was not wrong for the disciples to pick heads of wheat, even though it was considered as work, because his disciples needed to eat. Okay, and Jesus is saying, the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, works of necessity or mercy were thus allowed on the Sabbath. Okay, so by Jesus claiming authority over the Sabbath, is once again very contrary to what the Pharisees were holding on to. The Pharisees is everything, the law, the law, the law, the law, the law. Okay, we have the say, okay, about what the Sabbath should be. But Jesus is saying, no, you don't have the say, okay, because I am the Son of God, okay, and also the Son of Man, okay, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, and wow, if I'm the Pharisee, I'm listening to this, I'm like, who is this Jesus? Why is he suddenly claiming, that he's the Lord of the Sabbath? I will be a little bit chased off, lah. Okay, and you will find out that after this, Jesus is going to make them even more angry. Okay, which is the next part. Okay, so this one is the third Sabbath miracle. Okay, this next few verses, lah. Okay, 6 to 11. So on another Sabbath, Jesus went to the synagogue. Okay, again, synagogue is a place where the people meet. Okay, it's not as big as the temple in Jerusalem, but it's kind of like this small church lah. Okay, in that sense, okay, where people meet and go and listen to the word of God. Okay, and in that synagogue, there was a man whose right hand was paralyzed. Okay, who had a withered hand now. Okay, and some teachers of the law, and the Pharisees were there, and we are not sure. I don't think this is the same. Day, okay, as the picking of the grain incident. Okay, because it is another Sabbath, so it's another separate day, it's another Sabbath day. Okay, probably 1, 2, 3 weeks maybe after the grain incident. Okay, but the teachers of law and Pharisees were there once again. Okay, and they were not there to listen to what Jesus had to say. They were just there to look for Jesus' fault. Okay, because by that time, if I were the Pharisees, I thought, what last week, this guy said that he's the Lord of the Sabbath. Wow, I think he's teaching something wrong. We must go and catch him. Make sure that he's not teaching the wrong thing. Okay, so that's what they were there to do. Okay, they wanted a reason to accuse Jesus of wrongdoing, and they wanted to watch closely if Jesus would heal on the Sabbath. I suspect, this is not proven, but I suspect that this man with the right hand that was paralyzed, okay, or in this one was saying it's a withered hand, okay, basically cannot move the hand. Okay, I suspect that this man was planted there by the Pharisees. Yeah, I have no proof, okay. Maybe one day when I get to heaven, I'll go and ask, okay, did was this guy really planted there by the Pharisees? I suspect they were, because the teachers of the law, they wanted to find something, they wanted to find fault with Jesus. So I suspect that maybe the Pharisees planted this man over there. Not planted as in, correct tanah, but, he brought the man into the synagogue to see what Jesus would do. Okay, they watched Jesus closely if he would heal on the Sabbath. Okay, and of course, Jesus being God, okay, he knew what they were thinking. Okay, so he said to the man, stand up and come here to the front. Okay, so he told that man who, okay, this is another one that I also want to say. A lot of people seem to think that if the right hand is withered and paralyzed, that means he cannot move at all. No, it's just the right hand only, other masala. If the rest of his limbs are fine. So he could stand up and go to the front. Okay, so the man got up and stood there. And then Jesus asked the teachers, a lot of Pharisees, Jesus hadn't healed yet. No, he just called the man that was, that had that withered hand and paralyzed, okay, to come to the front, okay, and stand there. And then he asked the question of the teachers, the law and Pharisees. And interestingly, he didn't address the whole crowd. Okay, I imagine at that time that Jesus would probably his eyes now would be fixed on the teachers of the law and Pharisees. Okay, because Jesus knew that, they were there to trap him. They were there to, watch and look and see what he was doing. So he fixed his eyes on the teachers of the law and the Pharisees and asked them, what does our law allow us to do on the Sabbath? To help or to harm? To save a man's life or to destroy it. And that in itself, if you look at the question that Jesus asked, it's a no-brainer question. It's like a pendidikan moral question. Okay, there's only one right answer. I know those of you who don't like pendidikan moral, sometimes it's like, there's only one right answer. Okay, you cannot say to harm, because if the law allows us to harm on the Sabbath, then what's the point of the law? Or to destroy a man's life? So this is kind of a question now where we say there's only one right answer, which is to help and to save a man's life. Okay, notice that Jesus doesn't ask them directly, is it okay for me to heal this man? He doesn't know. Okay, Jesus is very smart. He asks it in another way that gives no choice to the Pharisees. Okay, the Pharisees have to say to help, and the Pharisees have to say to save a man's life. If Jesus had asked, does the law allow us to heal on the Sabbath? Then the Pharisees would be probably very proudly standing up and say, no, it doesn't. Okay, because they are very, very well versed with the law. Okay? But Jesus twisted the question in another way so that to make them think, is it okay for us to help others during the Sabbath? Is it okay for us to save a man's life? Or just because of the law, okay, we just kasi biar sajalah. Okay, if a man is dying on the Sabbath, just kasi biar dia mati, because you cannot work on the Sabbath. Jesus was twisting the question the other way around, okay, to make them think, which is more important, the acts of mercy or keeping the law on the Sabbath. Okay, the same theme as we saw in the previous section. So Jesus looked around, then said to the man, stretch out your hand. Okay, the man did so, and his hand became well again. Okay, and in doing so, the teachers of the law and Pharisees were filled with rage and discussed what they could do to Jesus. Okay, and that's the whole thing. But, I like this word, filled with rage. I sometimes wonder why they were filled with rage. Were they angry because their plans had foiled? If I was the Pharisees or the teachers of the law, I would be very angry because my plan, which I thought was foolproof, I bring this man over there to try to trap Jesus. Alamak, my plan tidak jadi. So it could be one reason why they were filled with rage. Another one is Jesus didn't answer the question that they wanted to ask, which is it okay to heal on the Sabbath? Actually, it's not okay, okay, because it's considered work. Okay, but Jesus didn't answer the question directly. Okay, or it could be that they were angry because Jesus actually healed on the Sabbath. So, and on the Sabbath day, or not just on the Sabbath day, in the synagogue, in front of everybody, Jesus worked. Okay, Jesus was doing some form of work, and and they were angry. It's like, wow, Jesus, virtually insulted us in front of everybody, virtually, mocked us or looked down at us in front of everyone. I always wonder, when I read this part, I always wonder why the Pharisees, what were they actually angry about? Okay, what were they actually angry about? And I could think of these three reasons. Okay, number one, their plans were foiled. Okay, number two, Jesus basically insulted them in front of everyone. Okay, and number three, Jesus didn't really answer their question. Okay, so I don't know which one was it that actually made the Pharisees angry. There could be another reason. Okay, maybe you have another thought for us, maybe, that's what I'm thinking about, I was always thinking, why were they angry? Okay, if I were the Pharisees, I probably would be angry because my plans were spoiled, okay, especially if you had gathered in a group and then I'm very sure that my plan will work, and then suddenly you find that your plans were spoiled. Okay, so but all this is speculation, okay, it's not written in the Bible. So what we know that the Pharisees were filled with rage. They were angry. Okay, they were angry. They were so angry that they started to discuss what they could do to Jesus. Okay, so they hatched another plan, okay, which we will see from time to time now. Okay, so so that's the first part. Okay, that's the first part of this section, which has to do with being the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, so for those of you who just came in, okay, so we have just covered the first 11 verses, okay, which is this one. But I just want to draw your attention to the table that I shared with you that day. Okay, in this one, oh sorry, cannot see this. This one. Okay. So for those of you who are taking Bible knowledge under me, okay, I want you to take some time, not today, not now, okay, because now we're recording. I want you to take some time to fill up this section. This is the third Sabbath miracle. The first Sabbath miracle also happened in a synagogue, okay, but it was the one where, you know, yeah, the one that I remember Jericho read this as begitu saja. Okay, so this was the man who had the evil spirit, okay, evil demon, spirit of an evil demon inside him. The second Sabbath miracle was Simon's mother-in-law, and this is the third Sabbath miracle. Okay, the third Sabbath miracle. I hope you guys still have this table, okay, and take some time later to fill up this table. Okay, what was the affliction? What did Jesus say and do? What happened to the afflicted? There's nothing really much here, but the responses is the one that is very important. Okay, what was the response of the Pharisees? And then if you want, you can put other notes now. Okay, it is not very clearly stated where this is, but we are guessing that this is still in Capernaum. Okay, so take some time to finish this, and then when we go into the fourth and fifth miracle, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this table later, lah. Okay. Any questions so far? Anybody? Everyone, okay? Any questions? Any comments? Before we go into the next section. Okay, so there was a question just now from Tristan. Sorry, not question. There was a comment just now from Tristan. Thank you, Tristan. So Tristan said that in the blue book, the blue book in the notes down there, it says that the Pharisees were angry because they could not respond. Okay, and the reason why they could not respond is because it's a trap question for them. Okay, if they were to answer, they will be actually trapping themselves. Because so Jesus' question was, is it to help or to harm? Okay, so if they say it's to help, means they're saying it's okay for you to heal this man. Okay, but they also cannot say to harm, because if they say to harm, then it's like, what kind of teacher are you? Okay, you're teaching us to allow this person to continue to suffer. So they cannot answer. Okay, to save a man's life or to destroy it, which is even worse. The obvious answer is to save a man's life. You know, but if they say to save a man's life, means they're again saying that okay, it's okay for you to heal this man, which they don't want. Okay, they don't want this man to be healed in that sense, lah. Okay, because they don't want this man to be healed on the Sabbath. Okay, if you heal any other day, lah, why must it be today? Okay, but Jesus asked in that way, okay, because it's a trap question. And I would say that, you know, they will be very angry. I would be very angry. It's like, you don't know how to answer. You don't know how to answer without trapping yourself. You know, so you feel very geram now. Okay, I think if you were the Pharisee, I'm quite sure that you also will be very geram. Imagine getting an exam question that you know the answer to, but you don't know how to answer. Okay, or you don't know, you know the answer, but you just don't know how to answer. It'll be so frustrating. Okay, for me at least for me, I think it'll be very frustrating. Okay. Thanks, Tristan, for the comment. Okay, let's continue on. We're going to continue on to the next section. Okay, this is a pretty short section, which is verse 12, okay, to verse 16. I'm going to ask Tristan to read this entire section since he just came in. Is it okay with you, Tristan?
Oh, lame. Okay.
Okay.
Wait, verse what?
Verse 12 to verse 16. Okay,
Okay.
Jesus chooses the 12 apostles.
Okay. At that time, Jesus went up a hill to pray and spent the whole night there praying to God. When day came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, and his brother Andrew, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James son of Alphaeus, and Simon who was called the Patriot, Judas son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became the traitor.
Okay,
Shame.
Shame. Okay, so obviously among the 12 apostles, okay, that Jesus chose, okay, one of the famous few will be Simon Peter, James and John, And then of course Judas Iscariot lah. And by extension, Judas, the son of James, also became famous because they have the same name. Okay, but these are some of the few that are famous. Another one that is always famous is Simon, is the other Simon. Okay, but in our text, it's called the Patriot, right? Okay, in other texts, this Simon the Patriot is also known as Simon the Zealot. Okay, and if you look at the front of the book, there's this group of people called the Zealots, and why were they zealous about? It'd be interesting to read, okay, about what they were zealous about. Okay, but let's come back to the PowerPoint. So, sorry. Okay, so we find that in this section, after Jesus had dealt with the apostles and everything, okay, he went up to a hill and prayed. Okay, he went up to a hill to pray, and he spent the whole night praying to God. Okay, when daytime came, he called all the disciples to him, and he chose 12 of them and named them apostles. And the first thing that I want you to notice is that in Luke, okay, Luke makes a distinction between disciples and apostles. Okay, disciples are people who follow Jesus. I think there is a comment, okay, down below your text over there that teaches us the difference between disciples and apostles. Can somebody read that for us, please? The difference between apostles and disciples. If you see, can you just read it out for us? Just unmute yourself and you can read it. Anybody? Mara.
Okay, me.
Okay.
Wait, where?
There's a section at the bottom there, I don't know which letter it is, okay, that they tell us the difference between disciples and apostles. Do you see it?
It Wait, there's two. There's
Yeah.
two sections. Wait, I read this. A disciple was a learner, a student. In the first century, a student did not simply study a subject, but he studied under a teacher. Jesus' disciples would be the group of people who attached themselves to him, regularly followed him, and were committed to his teachings. There were at least 72 of them, since this many were later sent out to preach. Then he said, the word apostle comes from the verb to send and means someone sent a messenger. From his large number of disciples, Jesus now chose 12 who would form his followers in the sense that they would be his followers, sent with a special charge with power and authority from him. As we shall see later in the Gospel, their number 12 matches the number of the tribes of Israel.
Right.
Holy
Okay. Okay, so we find that there's a distinction between disciples and apostles. Okay, of course, the first distinction is the number. Okay, there are many disciples. Disciples are people who study under a teacher, so they follow. Okay, they follow Jesus, wherever he goes, and they study all under him. Okay, and according to this, the footnote that was given to us, at this point there were about 72 disciples. Okay, whether they were 72 men or 72 men and women, I'm not really sure. It could be 72 men only. Okay, which means that there were more people following Jesus. Okay, but there were only 72 disciples. Okay, because later we find out that when Jesus sends them out, Jesus doesn't send the apostles, but Jesus also sent the disciples. So there were about 72 of them at this point. Okay, but out of the 72, Jesus chooses 12 people. Okay, and the distinction between disciples and apostles is very important for us to know. Disciples are people who follow and learn. Okay, but apostles are not just disciples, they are also people who are chosen and sent out. Okay, so it's a very different thing altogether. Okay, these apostles are people who are, which I think Tristan read to us, they were like messengers. Okay, they were people that were sent out to, to present a certain message. Okay, so obviously they have to be, people of some, they obviously have a higher or bigger responsibility compared to the disciples. Okay, and I like to think that this is probably the reason now why Jesus went up to a hill to pray. Okay, maybe Jesus at this time, he realized that, okay, I need to choose 12 people. Why 12? Okay, 12 is another sermon altogether. Okay, why the number 12 very important? Okay, but we're not going to come to it now. We just, it's, I think, suffice to know that, as in the footnotes, that the 12 matches the number of the tribes of Israel. Okay, if you remember in the book of Genesis, that Jacob had 12 sons. Okay, the 10th and the 12th were Joseph and Benjamin, but there were 12 sons that Jacob had. Okay, and these 12 sons later became the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, and that's probably also why Jesus chose the 12 apostles to match this entire scenario. So, Jesus had to choose out of the 72 people. Which 12? Which 12 am I going to send out? Which 12 am I going to choose to go out to share, to present to present everything that I have taught them. Okay, and I like to think that Jesus went up to the hill to pray because it was a big decision. How am I going to choose 12 out of 72 people? So Jesus went up to a hill to pray and spent the whole night praying to God. And I think it's important also for us to remember that whenever we are faced with a big decision, most of you are Form 5 after this you're going to be facing many decisions that will alter your life. Right now everything is being decided for you. Okay, which school you go to, which class you end up in, whether or not you want to take the Bible knowledge paper for SPM. Okay, actually it's your decision. Anyway, so whenever you are faced with a big decision, okay, I hope you remember that even in choosing the 12 apostles out of the 72 disciples, Jesus went to pray. Okay, Jesus spent some time alone with God, okay, to pray to God to make this big decision. And after praying, Jesus came down, okay, and then finally chose the 12. Okay, so I hope you remember that next time in making decisions, okay, always go to God in prayer first, and God will surely, okay, He will surely guide you. He may not just give the answer there and then direct okay, but I'm very confident that God will guide you. Okay, God will guide you into making a decision or any decision, okay, that is of His will. Okay, because even Jesus went up to the hill to pray. Jesus also had to pray. Okay, likewise, apatah lagi, okay, us, okay, yang mere mortals, okay, we should also pray, okay, whenever we are faced with a big decision, especially if it is a decision that will change our lives. Okay, so that's it for the second section. Okay, and now we come to, okay, so Jesus chooses the 12 disciples. Okay, just this is just this one. As I said just now, Simon in our book is called the Patriot. Okay, but in other books it's called a zealot. Okay, there's a reason. Okay, there's a reason why it's called the Patriot. What is he being patriotic about? Okay, it'd be good to read. Okay, and then of course this Matthew. Okay, this Matthew we know is the Matthew from chapter 5, which was previously known as Levi. Okay, look at me trying to write with this mouse. Okay, this Thomas, now Thomas is not really featured much in Luke, but in John, Thomas plays a very important role. This Thomas is the one that was doubting. He wasn't there when everybody else saw Jesus. Okay, so Thomas wasn't really Thomas. It's a famous story, it's called Doubting Thomas. Okay, and it became famous until it became a very, don't be such a doubting Thomas. Okay, people will always say that because Thomas was one of the few people that didn't see Jesus the first time he rose. Wasn't with the entire group when they saw Jesus the first time after Jesus rose from the dead. So Thomas said, unless I touch the hand and I touch the side, I won't believe. So he was very doubtful. He was like, really, man? Jesus rose from the dead, man? Okay, but this is in John, not really featured much in Luke. Okay, but it was more featured in John. And then, of course, Simon Peter, somebody who will be a very key figure, okay, in our entire book of Luke. Peter's brother is Andrew, James, and John. Okay, this will form the inner circle. Okay, Simon, Peter, James, and John. Okay, and then the rest will come. Of course, we have Judas Iscariot, not the Iscariot, sorry. Judas Iscariot, okay, who actually was the bendahari of the group. Okay, interesting fact now. Judas Iscariot was actually the treasurer amongst the apostles, and he was the one that was holding all the money. Okay, but in the end, he became the traitor, lah. Okay, which of course we will know this towards the end of Luke. Okay, so now we come to this next section, okay, which is the Sermon on the Plain. Hold on, let me see how many people there we have today. We have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be a bit difficult, but okay, fine. So what I actually want you to do is we're going to read this whole section, okay, and then after that, I'm going to decide now, okay, how we're going to go about doing this. Actually, I had actually hoped for more people, but maybe quite a lot of our friends are not able to make it today. It's okay. Okay, but I want, because the Sermon on the Plain is very long. It's 17 to 49 people. Okay, it's a long. It's about 32 verses altogether. Okay, but I want us to read first. Okay, I want us to start by reading the entire sermon first. Oh, sorry. Okay, I want us to read the entire sermon first. So we are once again going to, oh, we have a new person. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, okay, that might. Okay, we are once again now going to read the entire thing from verse 17 all the way to verse 49. Okay, it's very long. This is but it's not even as long as the one in Matthew. Okay, the the Sermon on the Plain, okay, is also very closely associated to the one in Matthew, which is called the Sermon on the Mount, which is on chapter 6 of Matthew. Okay, but for us in Luke, we only read it as the Sermon on the Plain. Okay, so I'm going to do this since there are this many people over here. Okay, I'm going to ask Eugene. Eugene, you read verse 17 to 19. Okay, take note of which part you're going to read. Okay, Eugene, you read verse 17 to 19. Jericho, you read verse 20 to 23. Okay, 20 to 23. Then Niger, you read 24 to 26. Okay, then Noel, you read 27 to 36, the whole thing. Okay, and then Tristan, you read 37 to 42. And then I'll read the rest. Okay. All right, everybody clear on what you're supposed to read? All right. So starting with Eugene, okay, you can unmute yourself and you can just start reading, okay?
When Jesus had come down from the hill with the apostles, he stood on a level place with a large number of his disciples. A large crowd of people was there from all over Judea and from Jerusalem and from the coast cities of Tyre and Sidon. They had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Those who were troubled by evil spirits also came and were healed. All the people tried to touch him, for power was going out from him and healing them all.
Okay, next. Who's the next person? Verse 20 to 23. I think it's Jericho. Yeah.
Jesus looked at his disciples and said, "Happy are you poor, the kingdom of God is yours. Happy are you who are hungry now, you will be filled. Happy are you who weep now, you will laugh. Happy are you when people hate you, reject you, insult you, and say that you are evil, all because of the Son of Man. Be glad when that happens and dance for joy, because a great reward is kept for you in heaven. For their ancestors did the very same thing to the prophets."
Thank you. Next person.
But how terrible for you who are rich now. You have had your easy life. How terrible for you who are full now. You will go hungry. How terrible for you who laugh now. You will mourn and weep. How terrible when all people speak well of you. Their ancestors said the very same thing about the false prophet.
Thank you. Next person.
But I tell you who hear me, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. If anyone hits you on one cheek, let him hit the other too. If someone takes your coat, let him have your shirt as well. Give to everyone who asks you for something, and when someone takes what is yours, do not ask for it back. Do for others just what you want them to do for you. If you love only the people who love you, why should you receive a blessing? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you receive a blessing? Even sinners do that. And if you lend only to those from whom you hope to get it back, why should you receive a blessing? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. No, love your enemies and do good to them. Lend and expect nothing back. You will, you will then have a great reward, and you will be children of the Most High God, for He is good to the ungrateful, for He is good to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful.
Thank you.
Okay. Do not judge others, and God will not judge you. Do not condemn others, and God will not condemn you. Holy moly. Forgive others, and God will forgive you. Give to others, and God will give to you. Indeed, you will receive a full measure, a generous helping poured in your hands. All that you can hold, the measure you use for others is the one that God will use for you. And Jesus told them this parable. One blind man cannot lead another one. If he does, both will fall into a ditch. No pupil is greater than his teacher, but every pupil, when he has completed his training, will be like his teacher. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but pay no attention to the log in your own eye? How can you say that? How can you say to your brother, please, brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, yet you cannot even see the log in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will be able to see clearly to see the speck out of your brother's eye.
Okay. All right. A healthy tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a poor tree bear good fruit. Every tree is known by the fruit it bears. You do not pick figs from thorn bushes or gather grapes from bramble bushes. A good person brings good out of the treasure of good things in his heart. A bad person brings bad out of his treasure of bad things. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, yet don't do what I tell you? Anyone who comes to me and listens to my words and obeys them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man who, in building his house, dug deep and laid the foundation on rock. The river flooded over and hit that house, but could not shake it because it was well built. But anyone who hears my words and does not obey them is like a man who built his house without laying a foundation. When the flood hit that house, it fell at once, and what a terrible crash that was. Okay, now so I'm just going to give you the introduction first, and then we're going to break off into group work. Okay, so the Sermon on the Plain, because the Sermon on the Plain is called the Sermon on the Plain because we find that in the starting of the sermon, in the starting of the passage, Jesus came down from a hill to a level place. Okay, now this level place is what we call as a plain, Sorry. Okay, this level place, okay, is what we call the plain. Okay, so he stood at a level place with a large number of his disciples. Okay, this is presumably after he had chosen the 12 people. Okay, he came down from the hill with the apostles. After he chose the 12, go to the hill, talk to the apostles. Okay, maybe give them some briefing of some kind. And he came down back to talk with the rest of the disciples. Okay, so but it was not just the disciples who were there. Okay, we find that there was a large crowd of people, okay, coming all the way from Judea and Jerusalem, and even the coast cities of Tyre and Sidon. Okay, if you look at the map at the back of your book, you can identify. Okay, and remember that even just considering Jerusalem and Judea, okay, which is like the next daerah, okay, they came all the way to Galilee just to listen to Jesus. So we find that at this time, Jesus had built some kind of reputation for himself, and people were wanting to hear about Jesus. So much so that they traveled. Okay, they traveled from far away places. Okay, like for example, Jerusalem. If you remember the story of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, it's one day's journey on foot. Okay, to travel from Jerusalem all the way to Galilee. It's one whole day. People still came. Okay, and not just one or two or three random persons. It's a large crowd of people. Okay, there was a whole lot of people that were coming from all over the place to listen to Jesus. Okay, and I guess that's also part of the reason why Jesus chose at that time, okay, to present the Sermon on the Plain. Okay, because of course the people came to hear Jesus, to be healed of their diseases. People who had evil spirits, okay, they wanted to be healed, and they were healed. Okay, all the people tried to touch him, for the power was going out from him and healing them all. Okay, and this brings us, and I guess because there were many people, okay, and remember that since chapter 5, Jesus had been going on and on and on about, I've come to show you this new way. Okay, this new way that is very, very, very different from the old ceremonial way of the Pharisees. Okay, and I guess Jesus took that opportunity to teach. Okay, it's like, hello, don't just come here to be healed. Okay, come and listen to me and what I have to say, because that's more important. Listen to what I have to say. And I guess that's why Jesus chose that moment, okay, to present the Sermon on the Plain. Okay, and of course the subsequent verses after that show the Sermon on the Plain. But I want to help you to try to deconstruct, okay, to try to deconstruct this Sermon on the Plain, because the Sermon on the Plain is a very difficult part. Okay, there's so many things to remember. Okay, so I found this this chart, okay, which I want you to fill in, okay, and it's kind of a summary on the Sermon on the Plain, which helps us to make it easier to remember. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, okay, first I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, because you're going to go into breakout rooms. Okay, this is a new feature I found in Zoom. Okay, we're going to use this and see how it's going to happen. Okay, pausing recording. Okay, so welcome back everyone from your from your breakout rooms. Okay, I hope it was an interesting experience. I also just found out that Zoom has this feature called breakout rooms. It's totally fun. Okay, I can go and interfere in every room. I can't see what you're doing, Tristan. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you think about. I'm going to let you think about this for another 2 more days, okay? Because it's going to be 12 o'clock, and I don't actually intend to continue this. But I want you to get this big picture, okay, of the Sermon on the Plain. Okay, in the center of it all is actually verse 36, which I will come to. Okay, this section, okay, the faithful and unfaithful disciples, part 1. Okay, if you notice that there are 2 sections about the faithful and unfaithful disciples. Okay, the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain begins with the faithful and unfaithful disciples and also ends with the faithful and unfaithful disciples. So there's a connection here. Okay, so this is the first part, which I'm going to do. Okay, and then this is the second part, which is, this is the last part, which is this Nigel and Jericho? Ini kan yang kamu orang buat? No. This is
No,
Noel.
ours is correcting others.
Okay, this is the third part.
Wait, what? I thought we were correcting others.
Dealing with enemy. So,
Hello.
Yeah. Were you for a while there afraid? Okay, so anyway, so this section, faithful disciples, is me, and then dealing with enemies is Nigel and Jericho, and then correcting others is Tristan and Eugene. Okay, and then the last section of faithful and unfaithful disciples is Noel. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to hold on to your notes first. Okay, on Friday we're going to start off by doing this. Okay, on Friday we're going to do this, and we're probably going to cover one or two miracles in chapter 7, and then we will call it a week. Okay, because the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain deserves a lot of time to. We should spend a bit of time over here. Okay, it's a bit dry because there's a lot of teaching, but once you get this idea, I hope that once you get this idea, then you see that, oh, actually it's all connected, and it's all connected based on the stuff that Jesus had said earlier, okay, which is, acts of mercy is always trumps the ceremonial law. And then secondly, Jesus has come to show us a new way of doing things, as opposed to the Pharisees' way, which was always holding on to the old law. Okay, so we will start this on Friday. Okay, Friday same time. Please remind your friends. Please remind your friends to come Friday, and then I will see you all on Friday lah. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording here.